Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. How you doing? I'm Chris Keefer. This is Eddie Larrett. Today we are here with the 2025 CRF450R Works Edition and a 2025 CRF450R with Enzo valve suspension. Completely stock, but valved, sprung for me. And then we got a brand new Works Edition. We're gonna do a little side-by-side comparison because, you know, we could be here and just give you an impression on the Works Edition, but a lot of your questions that come to my email say, hey, which one should I get? Is it worth the money? Well, we're gonna find out, but we're also gonna find out what it's like to ride a Honda, because we did this video with the Yamaha a couple months ago that it was soft. So let's get some suspension work done. Is it better than the Works Edition? Is the Works Edition still better, easy to ride? We're gonna find all of that out. I brought a bigger rider here, 230?
230.
230. He has had the Honda for a little bit in prior years, so he's familiar with the brand a little bit. So we're gonna hop on each of these bikes, give you some information, as well as rip down what you're gonna get on this Works Edition Honda when we come back. But let's ride for a couple hours and then give you some opinions. All right, that's a wrap here today at Glen Helen Raceway. I don't want to say that word too much because I know you guys are sick of seeing every media people, we're at Glen Helen, everybody at Glen Helen. I'm working on it, so don't yell at me in the YouTube comments. I'm working on it, getting to Georgia here soon. We're gonna do some more stuff and some red clay, soft dirt, but this is where Honda wanted us to be, so we are at Glen Helen Raceway. Eddie Larrett, we both rode the R with Enzo suspension, and of course, the 25 CRF450R Works Edition. So before we move on to the little bit of a comparison that we did today, what are you getting with the Works Edition? $12,600, $9,700, correct?
Yep.
So let's just call it 3 grand, 3 grand. The Works Edition, you're getting a Hinson clutch basket and cover. Unlike other editions, you're actually getting a basket.
Yep.
Other editions, you're only getting the cover. So that is something a little bit different that Honda does. You have a Yoshimura exhaust with stainless steel head pipe and titanium muffler. You're not getting a tie head pipe, stainless, which in the world of slip fits, if you guys have a slip fit joint, that is much better. 2 tie pieces together actually wear out, and then all of a sudden you have a rattle or an air leak.
Yep.
And so having a stainless head pipe does help for longevity. That is nice. You have a twin air, air filter, throttle jockey, graphics, seat cover, which we're going to break down here. That actually is quite a bit of an improvement compared to the stock one. We have hand polished cylinder ports. It's not a port job, it's polished. Just know that. DID Dirtstar LTX rims, Kashima coated outer fork tubes, titanium oxide coated fork legs, titanium oxide coated 18mm shock shaft versus a 16mm non-coated shock shaft on the R. Hand operated fork adjusters right here. You can just on the fly, easy to do. A black anodized axle holder. I didn't even know what the hell that was. I had to ask my guy, Eddie, what the hell is the axle holder? It's a fork lug. Honda, just say fork lug. It's fine. DID DM2 gold chain, gray metallic coated triple clamps, a little bit different coating there. Renthal Kevlar grips. Eddie loves these right here. So, and a dedicated ignition and injection mapping setting. So ECU settings are dedicated for this bike. Okay, now that we got the bits out of the way, if you go back to my older YouTube video where we compared the YZ450 to the CRF450R, most of what the rider said is like, it's a great bike, suspension soft. So I was like, okay, let's get this stuff done. Does it improve the bike? So right off the bat, this man was a part of that test. Let's get to that portion. How much better is the R with suspension work? I mean, Enzo did this, so set up for me. Obviously, he could use heavier springs, but
yeah, it's not even comparable. I really wanted to pick the Yamaha in that comparison video, or sorry, the Honda in that comparison video, but we were doing it off the showroom floor and what I could ride. The Yamaha is more rigid, it's more stiff,
yeah.
So I could ride the bike. I didn't feel, out of control or any danger on that. So I was actually really excited to ride this, even though people were like, it's not set up for you. Me and you are almost 60 pounds difference at
right.
230 to 170. So it's a big, big, big difference, okay? And I got to feel it today with riding this, because
right.
this brought me more back into the level of that other than the shock shaft. So it's, if we could go back and shoot that and use this bike versus the Yamaha bike,
you would have went Honda.
I would have went Honda totally.
And then, so you corner better on this?
Way better.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so for me, just on the R in general, it helps the bike so much more. So if you guys are buying a CRF450R, look at 2025, Honda did a lot of work to the chassis. It is an improvement. Is it completely just the most comfort in class in chassis? No, it is not, but it is a step in the right direction. Now that you have added the correct spring rate, some valving, a little bit more hold up, the bike is more stable. It enhances what Honda did to the chassis, so it's even better. So for me, that is a plus. Now that we compare it to the Works Edition, so for me, I'm gonna start off with something really easy. Let's start with the engine comparative to the R. This is gonna sound ass backwards, but the R feels more racy and faster to me than the Works Edition. The Works Edition, and no matter what map, 1, 2, or 3, linear, smoother, almost a little bit longer feeling compared, second and third gear compared to this bike, where the R spools up quicker, has more excitement, has more pickup, hits harder. But for me, 170, I prefer this engine character more.
Yeah, this is easier to ride for sure. I went through the maps on these, 1, 2, 3s on both bikes. Both have, this has the Honda ECU for the head, that has just a stock ECU, no Vortex or anything. And I rode that early this morning and I was like, man, and keep in mind, I'm coming off a 25 Cowie that I've been riding. So I hop on this thing and I'm like, man, this thing feels so fast.
Yeah.
Like it's jerking out of my arms, I'm wheelie coming out of corners, and I'm like, okay, I don't know that I really like this, you know, because it's uncontrollable for me. But as I rode it more and got used to riding it, get out of my ways of riding my Cowie and riding the Honda, I'm like, man, 230 pounds, this is awesome. Like I could bury it in some of these corners. Third gear, no problem. I could ride the bike in third gear most this whole track. So I was pretty happy with that. I'm like, man, this is good. But then as I started to put laps together, I started to feel that fatigue come.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, here we go. I'm kind of getting that Yamaha feel, or starting to wear me out a little bit. So when I got the chance to get on this bike, right away you think, and it's the same thing that everyone does, when you think you're doing these head mods to 450s, we're not necessarily increasing power, we're moving the power around.
Spreading it around,
yeah, to make it more manageable, but a deeper, stronger feel. So when I rode this bike, I was like, oh, this is even better. Yeah. Like this is even easier to ride in long periods of time. I rode it towards the end of the day at Glen Helen, so it started to get a little drier. And I fell in love with this engine package.
Yeah, look at, let's face it, Eddie's always like, I love all these bikes, but then he came off the bike and talked to me. He's like, I'm all screwed up now because he loves his Cowie. Now he loves this bike.
It's easy. I mean, this is the cool thing about what we get to do, right? Like we get to ride these bikes at their whole of what they are. Yeah. Obviously, they're a little different for me because the suspension generally doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
So that's why I was kind of excited. Even though this is 60 pounds off, I could still ride this bike and feel super comfortable on it. So now I can find the character. Now I can pick the Cowie apart of like, oh, well, I really like this about the Cowie, but now I rode the Honda. Well, it corners better than the Cowie, right? It has more lean angle stability than the Cowie does. And I'm like, wow, I didn't have, one section of the hill going up the hill there. Usually on the Cowie, I got to get it square and get it to go. The Honda, I could drift right up to it. So I do use the word love a lot, and it's probably, you know, the best, you know,
As long as
love,
you
all
don't
this
use
stuff.
the word perfect, I'm
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, I did that
No,
once.
nothing's perfect.
Yeah.
So if you're wondering if you're looking like, okay, a bigger guy or which engine is best for me, if you want a harder hitting engine, more excitement, go with the R, because that's what it's going to give you in stock form. Look, if you're going to put an aftermarket muffler on it, you're going to change that engine character anyway.
Yep.
So just know that. Most of the time in the world of stock 450 mufflers, you're going to have the most excitement, most low end, most of the time with stock systems. You put an aftermarket system on it, it changes the engine character, smooths it out right away. Just going to let you know that. So if you're looking for more power, get the R. If you want a smoother, longer, more linear power, the WE is better in that direction. I will say, comparative to the engine spool up, how it revs, the smoothness, I feel less vibration on the WE versus the R.
See, I don't feel any vibration.
Okay.
Because I come off a Cowie, so
That vibrates.
When I get on this thing, I'm like, vibrate what?
Yeah, that vibrates like a bat out of hell. So,
Yeah.
Nonetheless, less vibration on the WE versus the R. Moving on to the chassis side of things, I mentioned this earlier to the Honda guys. What Honda did to their chassis is actually, this Works Edition complements the new chassis advancements that they did for us in 2025. The way the power is delivered and the smoothness of the Kashima coating and the 18mm shaft, it enhances this chassis more and it creates a less rigid feel. I can't believe I'm about to say this to you guys, but in the world of comfort, I come to Glen Helen a lot. I ride the Yamaha a lot here. This Works Edition feels better on initial bump touch and slap down than my Yamaha. The Yamaha feels stiffer in the chassis area versus the WE. So for me, I have more front end contact on the Honda versus the Yamaha, and to me the chassis just feels less rigid. So comparative to the R and the WE, I feel like this chassis is a little bit more compliant because I think that has something to do with how the engine character builds.
Yeah, so I come off the Yamaha all last year, and that was always my gripe the whole time. I'm like, man, when is this thing going to break in? It just feels so stiff. Then I get on the Cowie, and I'm like, oh, this thing feels like a noodle, right? It's pretty soft. Then this thing just falls right in the middle.
Yeah,
and
it's a good analogy. Yeah,
I'm like, wow. So I get I'm getting the best of all the traits of the, like you just said, the lean angle traction, the stability, and the comfort and the choppy and the bumps. I think Honda, obviously we know Honda really keyed in on that this year with their 25 models to get their chassis where we want it. And I think they checked the box.
I mean,
for the first generation.
If you guys are looking for a little bit more lean angle, for me, cornering ability, the WE does that a little bit better for me because I think the action of the suspension moves a little bit more. Most of the time when I come to Glen Helen, I speed up my rebound to have the wheels follow the ground more, and this coating actually makes it move a little bit more in the stroke and more active, which follows the ground better, which in return helps me lean the bike better. So for me, I can corner this bike better. Now, not everything is perfect. Not everything is great. It is soft for me as well, and I'm sure it is for Eddie. Mid-corner, I'm getting too low and then it wants to stand up. So either I am having oversteer and it's knifing, or as I'm coming up to give it throttle, it's pushing out past area 3 of the corner. So I had to stiffen this up quite a bit to get rid of that. It still has that Honda a little bit as I'm coming into the corner, a little bit of a twitchy feel. That hasn't gone away. I tried dropping the fork to try to help that along. That didn't help that. It actually made my corners worse, so I went back up to 5mm on the fork height. But there's just a little bit of a wiggle coming into the corner and some oversteer still inside of this package. And that is a little bit more noticeable on the R than the WE for me.
Right.
Same thing.
Yeah, I did feel that a couple times because we have like some choppy entrances today. So as you're trying to find that rut to pick into it, I did notice a little wiggle on the front end. But to me, at my speed and my pace, it's not a huge concern for me. I think with some suspension work, sitting down with somebody, I think you could dial that out pretty easily.
I had a Yamaha privateer supercross rider come ride this bike today, and we can't name his name because you probably might get in trouble, so we're not going to talk about that. But his comments were, my Honda, or this Honda corners better than his Yamaha. Not shocking, right? But he's like, he was surprised of how much comfort it had within the chassis and how well he could come into corners and how much front end bite he had. To me, the Works Edition does that really well. If I could like compare it to other machines, I say the Kawasaki still has the most front end traction, and then right below it would be this Honda.
Yeah.
So for me, there's a nice blend of comfort, stability, and easy to ride engine character on this Works Edition. Now, if we're nitpicking, I do not like the clutch. If you guys are Honda owners out there and you want a better action in your clutch, a little bit longer throw, a little bit more of a linear feel, put a Kawasaki clutch on your Honda. There's on my website, keeferinctesting.com, there's an article on how to do that. I'm basically just sticking the whole Kawasaki system on here, routing it, and boom, and you have a little bit of a less on-off feeling. This thing is really on-off. Do you notice that?
So when you're saying that, you're just changing the master cylinder, not messing with the slave cylinder.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, because I got a couple emails about that already.
Yeah.
So we're only replacing the master cylinder. We cannot, obviously the Cowie slave cylinder is not going to bolt to the engine because it's different bolt patterns.
So they use different piston sizes between the two, Honda and Kawasaki, so the action is different. So they are both made by Nissan, so that is easy. But if you want a better action, the Kawasaki unit is a little bit better. You can do that. I'm going to nitpick the seat. That seat, I never thought Yamaha, something worse than a Yamaha. That Honda is a piece of shit seat. I'm out. I'm sorry, Honda. That's horrible. The edges of that seat, my ass is still sore right now. You got a bigger ass than me. I don't know where you're at with that, but comparative, the Works Edition, the way the throttle jockey seat has seams and pleats, it's more square, and for me, way better feeling on my seat. Nitpicking, yes, you can just go get a seat cover, boom, bam, boom, good to go, but in stock form, I'm out. This is much better. You feel that?
For me, I'm okay with the seat.
Your big ass is okay?
Yeah, I'm okay with the seat because I'm coming off the Cowie cushion, I call it. You know, it's like a love seat.
Yep.
And Cowie has so much foam and so much height in between here that my seat on my Cowie is already dead. I mean, I need a new foam. This is so compact and tight. I don't feel much move in that seat.
Dude,
like when you're off the butt,
I'm on the edge of my seat on that. I'm right in the frame rails. I'm out, and it hurts.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'm out on is these Kevlar grips. I'm out. Too fat for me. Half waffle soft. Live your life better. No problem. I would rather have these than those. What about that?
It's a toss. Both of them. I mean, that one didn't spin and this one spun, which is normal. That one's still in the right position. This one spun back. Yep. But yeah, I mean, it would be pretty simple for them to just send that down the road.
All right. So comparative. What do you want to know? You know, Keefer, which one should I buy? It's $3,000 to me. If you have $10,000 to spend, you're going to do some extra work to your Honda besides leave it stock, just buy the Works Edition. You're going to be happier. If you're going to have to do your suspension on either, it doesn't matter anyway. You have the coatings. The action of the suspension is better because of the coatings. The engine character is better. The ECU tune is a little bit smoother. For me, easier to ride. If you don't want to spend extra $3,000 and you want a faster feeling Honda, go with the R. But for me, as an overall package, and this is just based on track feeling. This is not even based on looks or parts on the bike. Just track feeling, I think it's worth $3,000.
Yeah, for sure. If you're a nut job like me and you like doing garage builds and building race bikes, you would buy that bike and basically build your own Works Edition. But if you're to the point where you just like riding beautiful motorcycles and set the suspension and get rid of these grips and stuff, then just buy this bike. I mean, it's got the biggest thing, the biggest dollar value that you see in this bike. I mean, these suspension coatings and stuff, there's people that do this all over the place. This muffler is not cheap on the wallet, and that Henson clutch basket is not cheap. So those are the two things that when I look at these two bikes differences, like you want the 18 millimeter shock shaft, you want this cool muffler, and
let's face it, if you actually added the dollar amount, if you purchase these things independently by itself, it's more than $3,000.
Yeah.
The Works Edition Yoshimura muffler is its own special unit. If you go buy a Yosh system for the R, it's not this, the mufflers are different. Okay. So it's tuned for this specific motorcycle. So chances are you could probably build your R to be closest to this WE with an aftermarket muffler, an ECU tune possibly, and it'll be close. But I still feel like if you're buying a bike, no fuss, no muss, this is worth $3,000. So good job to Honda. I feel like comparative to last year's Works Edition, it's a big difference.
I rode that bike.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah. And you weren't too pumped with it.
Yeah, we put KYB 8-kit stuff on it and it cleaned it up for the most part. But yeah, for me, they took a big leap forward.
Yeah, and look, if you guys want to build your own bike, that's great. I understand how much that you guys like to spend time in your shop, build your own stuff. That's what he likes to do, so I understand that. But you just want to go buy a bike and feel the difference right away. This Works Edition is worth $3,000, plain and simple.
Yep.
You are owners. Huge difference when you do suspension work, so this bike is an improvement. It's actually jumped up quite a bit for me since Ross and the guys over at Enzo did some work. Yoshi and the gang did a great job. They stiffened up the fork spring, so I'm on a 5-1 fork spring, and I left the stock shock spring on this, just different valving, and to me, it's not as empty on the rear, has more hold up on the front, and it creates a better chassis feel when you can bring that suspension up, especially when you're loading the suspension. So
for me, it made it make the bike feel so much more stable.
Yeah.
Like keeping the suspension and the chassis up where it needed to be from where we rode it in the production form. Well, I mean, wow.
We're gonna go ride the Kawasaki SR next week, or by the time you guys see this, it'll be the same week. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab this, we're gonna grab the SR after we initially do the SR, and we're gonna compare them because I feel like those two are gonna be really close, and that's gonna be a fun test to do. So we're gonna have that up on the YouTube channel. If you have any questions about these bikes, Chris, K-R-I-S, at KeeferInkTesting.com. That is a virtual door to open up and ask some questions. Feel free to drop me a line if you need anything. And if you are a heavier guy, 230, mechanical, like to work on your bikes, Eddie, E-D-D-I-E, at KeeferInkTesting.com. That's the email right there, and we're happy to help you out right here. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to tell people about this show, what we're doing over here. Subscribe, like, it helps us out, keeps this thing up and moving, and we'll continue to do more of these down the line. So 2025 is right around the corner. So stay tuned for more videos right here on our website.